Good morning. Happy, I guess what's today, Tuesday?
It is a Tuesday. Yeah,
it is a Tuesday. Welcome to the Stop the Madness podcast. I'm Alex Bolin, and this is...
I'm Ben Risco. Happy to be back for another episode.
Yeah.
I will say before we get rolling, to those that are peeking behind the curtain, we do record these in advance of when they come out.
That's right.
But today is Tuesday, and it is Veterans Day. And so I just want to say to Alex, not to be cliche, but thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
Our company, Digital Thinker, is military-owned or veteran-owned, and so shout out to your dad as well, Tony Bolin, and then one of our lead consultants, Tyler, was a Marine.
Is a Marine.
Yeah,
Thank you. Don't tell him he was one because he'll whoop your ass.
That's true, and he would in a heartbeat. But just shout out to those guys and to all of you that are veterans too.
Yeah.
This will come out later than Veterans Day, but we want to give you guys your due. I come from a military family as well. Dad was Navy, mom was Air Force, and then Grandpa was Army.
Nice.
Uncle was Air Force.
So what happened to you?
Fell far from the tree, to be honest, but have a lot of love and respect for our military folks too. So just wanted to call that out before we get rolling on the podcast today.
It's all good. I appreciate you calling that out, Ben. Yeah, Veterans Day to me is it's important not because of me. It's important for everybody that has served. Fun facts, if you didn't know, less than 1% of the entire U.S. population has served in the U.S. military throughout time.
Wow.
Probably not World War II. That was pretty mass surgence of people, right? But it's about less than 1% of the entire population has served. Of that 1% that does serve, I think it's either 10 or 12% actually make it to retirement. Most people get out before retirement. And it's and the reason I bring that up is because I am actually, as of 2 weeks ago, I hit my 10-year mark with the Army Reserves.
Wow.
And so another episode we're going to record later today with a good buddy, Brian Bieski. We're going to talk a little bit more about veteran stuff. And so I can't wait to ask him like what his experience was, like enlisting, showing up to MEPS, the whole nine. It's fun hearing everybody's unique experience. And then going back to, Tyler, our Marine, he has and I'm not going to give away the boat because I want him to come tell the story with us, but I doubt he will. I don't know if he'll be camera shy. But anyway, he was in Tripoli when the embassy fell in 2014, I think that was, maybe 13. So he was the Marine security detail for the U.S. Embassy in Tripoli when they had to evacuate.
Wow.
And that is a wicked story because they basically had like a 20-car armored convoy, but they were like Toyota Hiluxes. They were just normal trucks. And he said that when they got the order, they had to all rush down to the armory room, and I guess the supply sergeant said, "None of this exists anymore. Take what you want." And so they got he was telling me they were stuffing their pockets with grenades. Dudes were throwing like rocket launchers on their bags. They were stealing like night vision goggles and stuff like that because none of it existed anymore. Like it all got written off the books, and they didn't want the locals to get it. And so I guess this is giving away the story, but so they made it to some airstrip in a different country. And they technically didn't exist in their travel either, right? Because they weren't granted diplomatic asylum or what have you. So they had to negotiate with the French Legionnaire at one border at some point in time, and they couldn't tell them they were Marines, but they were like, wink, wink, please let us through. And then they get to the airfield, and the local army at that airfield wouldn't let them on the airfield. And they literally watched the C-17 circling over their heads, and they're trying to say, hey, this is our ride. What can we do to get on the airfield? And they were hemming and hawing, and Tyler said that one of the dudes not only had a bag of cash, I bet it was about $500,000. He had a bag of cash from the embassy, and he walked up to the commanding officer and said, here's $500,000 US. You now own all of these vehicles, everything that's inside of it. Can you let us on the airstrip? And they said, okay. And the airplanes didn't stop. They landed, they were rolling. They literally threw everybody in the back of the C-17s and then took off and landed in Jacksonville, Florida about probably 9 hours later.
Crazy. Art of the deal. You need about $500,000 in cash, and you can get just about anything you want.
Armored vehicles, right? Armored vehicles. Well, good stuff. Well, today we are joined by a buddy of mine, I'm not allowed to say maintenance expert. He told me not to put him in the maintenance box, right? So he's a manufacturing expert, probably more of a automotive manufacturing expert, Trent McJunkin. Trent, welcome to Stop the Madness, brother.
Thanks, guys. I'm happy to be here.
Good. Well, we're happy you're here. And, I think we can skip some of these pleasantries that you see on some podcasts, because we all know each other here at this point. We damn near had enough conversations. So, Trent, I wanted to ask you first, take us back to the beginning of your journey in your career. Like, I don't want to necessarily say job number one, but what was the moment in your life that created the path that you went down to get to where you are today?
So I think that there was not one particular moment. There was probably a compounding and culmination of many moments. But I really credit my high school English teacher with telling me that you're too smart to not go to college. She told me to pick something out of a book. She didn't care what it was, so I picked something. And fast forward a few years down the road to my first maintenance job. I had a 2-year degree, and I knew I was okay. So my first day at my very first maintenance job, I'm walking through this hot body shop in May, and the first time I saw a robot was my first day as a maintenance technician.
Whoa.
So I thought, these people have made a terrible mistake. I can never let them find out. So I just came in and wanted to learn as much as I could, and I had the privilege to work with some of the brightest minds in maintenance as a technician for several years there.
How old were you when you got that job?
I was at the ripe age of 20.
20?
Yes.
Wow. What was I doing at 20 years old? I was, I think, my second year into my EMS job. I probably shouldn't say specifically where. I don't want to get bitten in the ass on that one. So I was probably year 2 into that, making terrible life choices. And it sounds like you were, I don't want to say on a better path. You were on a different path.
For sure.
Doing different things in a very cool way. So 2 things that stuck out to me. One is you had a teacher that saw something in you. I like to think everybody has a story like this, but I'm coming to find out most people don't. And so I think that goes to show, Trent, that, you stuck out specifically and somebody did something about it. And I'm sure that has been passed forward throughout your life so far. I'm sure you've done that for other people, and we can talk about that in a minute. But then the second component is nobody forced you, so to speak, to have to go do a 4-year degree route to find success and fulfillment in today's workforce, right? You got a 2-year degree, which I think is fantastic. I have no degree, by the way. I'm just a high school graduate. I have 0 degree, so I'm not qualified to do much in a lot of opinions, to be honest, which is hilarious because last week at the manufacturing conference, I stood up on a stage and told everybody that has an MBA that they're dumb. So
It was a bold choice, but I think it landed.
It was. So that's cool. Well, I guess where through this path of discovery, where did you find your passion? Like what is your passion? And then 2, how did you find that flame, and how do you continue to support it every single day?
So I think it comes naturally to me to find systems and processes that make things move forward, whether they're robust and they're very effective, or maybe they need some refining, or maybe there's just complete chaos and we need to find clarity and context in that chaos. But the other piece of that is people development, because people, for no reason, they had nothing to gain from it, poured into me and helped develop me. And I don't know why, but I want to do that for other people.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, for the first point, just kind of seeing that there are things that could be improved, or there are better ways to do things. Is that something you kind of had to learn, or is that something that was kind of core to you just as you developed? Like you were just like, I see something that could be better here. How do we achieve getting to that point, or is that something you kind of had to grow into?
I don't think it was natural. I think most things that we become good at is kind of a combination of our environment and opportunities and our level of preparedness. But where it started with me was working with maintenance technicians who wanted to make machines run better because it gave them an incentive. That was, they didn't work as hard that day. Mm-hmm. And the byproduct of that was the line produced more units. So everybody won.
Yeah.
It's a skewed way of looking at it, but you're probably not going to present any keynotes on that, but it worked.
That's an interesting point because, we always talk about, what's the output? What are we getting out of this as a business? And to hear that side of it where a technician just at the core of their day, they're saying they want to come in and do things as efficiently as possible without having to work as hard so that they can go home and be with their family and get to dinner and, feel like they had a good day but didn't have to overexert or work overtime. Like I think it's very dumbed down of a target, but it's good to hear that because a lot of folks, especially in leadership, may not understand like what those technicians are hoping for or what their goals are. So to kind of hear that as just something that's super easy, like we just wanted to be able to knock out some really easy stuff and not work as hard, but we're still doing very well as a business. It's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, and it's from a high-level leadership standpoint, I think it's more important to deliver to those people that you care about them before you expect them to care about whatever your initiative is. And if that creates margin in their life of maybe whenever I leave after my 12-hour shift, my back and my knees don't hurt, or I can make it home for dinner, or I don't have to work overtime and I don't have to miss time with my kids.
Yeah.
But when you address those, you're more likely to get them to come over to your side and see things from the visionary perspective.
Yeah.
I think it's I keep having a hard time believing, and maybe, sorry, I got to pause before I say this next statement and give some perspective. I think I've been working with a stress coach recently, and part of that stress coach has taught me, again, more self-discovery, helping me be a better leader, things along those lines. But what I'm getting at is, Stacy, if you're watching this, you've taught me I have superpowers, and I don't think they're superpowers. Like, I feel like my superpowers are just kind of normal to everybody, and she's helped me learn that that is not the case. Now, everybody has their own superpowers, right? But I guess my personality type, for example, I just have an innate way of either learning things incredibly fast and then understanding it, and then some of the things I do that just come natural to me are just superhuman, I guess. So why I preface that is I was about to say that I'm continually blown away on some of these leadership components that I find to be really simple, like really, really simple. And so I took a beat because I finally realized, well, it may be simple to me. It may not be simple to everybody else, right? But it still is a relatively simple mindset. I keep bumping this damn thing. The relatively simple mindset of, and I think it's an easy trap as we people fall into of, I'm at work, I got my mission, I got to hit these numbers, I want to stay employed. Like, it's natural to be self-serving, right? And it's natural to do that. But where things start getting unnatural is when you start manipulating or taking advantage of other folks for personal gain. Now, it's unnatural, but it's a slippery slope in a natural path. And so I think it is a little unnatural to be selfless in that nature and find that you can have the same desired output that you're trying to get to by having a form of selflessness or caring for your people, right? And like you just said, making sure they get home for dinner. We knocked out overtime this weekend because we got the job done well. You're doing a lot of little things that can go a very long way. And you're right, the leadership piece is truly key to that. So you have I don't know if it's a story, but it is a little bit of a story that we've talked about in the past where you called it, getting my folks more ass time, and they were able to do more with it. Why don't you talk to us about that a little bit?
So I think that goes into tailoring your initiative or your project in a way that appeals to the people who are doing the work. And at every level, everyone in your organization, if you're going to be successful, you have to break your high-level goals down in a way that they understand and that matters to them. Whether this is a maintenance technician, the maintenance technician, everyone you talk to, they want to have fewer breakdowns and fewer reactive scenarios. They may be that reactive hero with the cape that swoops in and saves the day, But at the end of the day, they want those to be fewer and farther between. So if you can tailor that in a way that they can understand it and they can get on board with what you're trying to do, then you're going to get the outcome that you want and the outcome that they want. This applies not just in manufacturing, but even the people who clean your facility. If they don't understand why it's important to clean the common areas in the restrooms to a certain standard because it has a direct impact on morale and retention and all those things, they're the most important people in your building. And if they don't understand that, then they're not going to come to work with the same pride. Everyone who does something in your facility pulls a lever that makes the machine go. And I think it's important as a leader to be able to break that down into bite-sized pieces that are applicable to you and everyone who plays a role in that.
That's so true. So there were like two things I want to talk about there. Which path to go down? So what's interesting to me out of this, and I'd love your take on this in a second too, Ben. From a marketing perspective, and this is where it drives me up the walls, right? Like whether you're selling software, consulting services, whatever, the stigma is, everybody's reactive. It feels like just all of American manufacturing is reactive, right? Like there's so many statistics. 70% of manufacturing organizations are still reactive in their maintenance initiatives, and 80% of them still are on pen and paper. And it's just it sounds skewed in some ways. I think it's believable because, we see it time and time again. There's still a lot of reactiveness out there. But again, the common stigma that comes back, it's like a ripple effect associated with we're reactive because maintenance doesn't care. Or it feels, again, like, there's always been this somewhat stigma that maintenance is the redheaded stepchild of an organization because, let's face it, they have a thankless job. I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's hard. It's really hard work, and they do get blamed for a lot of stuff. So I want to get your opinion on that, Trent. So, like, why do you think maintenance continues to get a little bit of a bad rap? But when you go out there in the field, right, like you're boots on the ground, man, and you've talked to a lot of folks. You've probably been in tons of plants and talked to a lot of other people. If the maintenance people want to improve, why do we still have this vicious cycle of assumption that maintenance is the bad guy or we can't get them to improve? Where's the disconnect?
I think it's from two fronts, right? The people who are in these higher leadership positions, most of them don't come from a maintenance background, so they don't speak the maintenance language. So they don't know how to motivate the maintenance people, speak to what fires them up. But the people from the maintenance side, we get lost in all of the technical details. And if I tell you, you're not making your numbers because this conveyor won't run because the motor's undersized, and you just start, the eyes roll back in the back of your head, and you start thinking about what you're going to do and where you're going to go play golf this weekend. Because I didn't tailor it in a way to speak to what matters to you. And I didn't give you a clear path forward. And I think that's the storytelling piece. You were talking about the marketing side. It's all about people, but it's also about how you can tell the story of what you need to do in order to execute for the business.
What do you think, man?
Where do you think that starts? It sounds like because there are two fronts, there is, naturally we go to like a leadership versus maintenance type of thing. It feels like there's a lot of opportunity for education between the two. With your experience where you've been, where do you see some of those easy wins to start bridging that gap between the two? As far as education, we've talked on previous episodes about the importance of, if you're in a leadership or office type role, being able to go out on the floor and really start to talk to these people and see what they do day to day. That's just one example. What kind of things have you seen as far as how do we start to bridge that gap and be able to learn, if I'm a maintenance person, how do I craft my story to say, this might be a very technical thing. We need to get new equipment here, or our parts setup is not what we need it to be. And if it was, we'd be better. Being able to tell that to leadership, and then vice versa. Leadership saying, we're starting this initiative. How do I speak in maintenance terms to connect? Where do you find some of those easy wins?
I think it really starts with a conversation and getting all of the people who play a role in it to communicate and go to the place where the losses are happening, whether that's the plant floor or wherever. Go out there and say, okay, this is not performing to the expected standard. Why is that? And bring a whiteboard if you want and break down those pieces. This doesn't do this. Why? What's the answer? Why? Mm-hmm. And then you're going to uncover where your losses are coming in, whether that's what we've talked about, the cycle of doom, where you go into some plants and everything's just on fire and you wonder why. And you start to peel the layers back and you start to see, oh, there's a latent issue here. And then you can start to address those.
Gotcha.
Man, that's powerful. I want to swing a little harder into the leadership element here. I think we could probably talk about leadership all day, right? And we were supposed we were trying to get old buddy Don Bent in here, but he couldn't make it today. He's going to come, I think, December. Yeah, our December recording date. Anyway, had the pleasure of meeting Don last week at the South Carolina Manufacturing Expo, and thank you for, I say, helping facilitate that in some ways, Trent. You've introduced me to a lot of people, by the way. And so, I guess from your perspective, like, what are a couple of really bad leadership instances you've seen that continue to promote this process of reactive components or discouraging curiosity, whether it's in maintenance or ops or quality? It's a leadership instance that isn't promoting continuous improvement.
I think there are patterns that repeat themselves in different industries and different companies. And one of those is when a leader believes this is mine, I'm in control, and the outcome is what I will make it. And a whole lot of I statements, and it's mine. Whenever you can come to terms with you're just driving the car, but it's everybody else is making the car go. Once you can break it down that your job really isn't to be the one out front waving the flag. It's the one who facilitates the work, eliminating the roadblocks, being at the point of friction. Those are the differences between the leaders who make impacts and the leaders who spin their wheels. Is how do you frame yourself in that leadership picture?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a specific instance you can mention on that? Rolling through the Rolodex of memories here?
I think I have several. Okay. You see leaders who come in and they're just hot right out of the gate. And they're going to come in and they're going to change everything and put their flavor on everything, but they don't understand context. So you take what was a negative situation and created the need for them to show up anyway, and before they took a look and took a beat and said, what's really happening here? They said, I'm just going to take my bag of tricks and dump it out on the table, and it's going to work. Well, then you get that cultural pushback. You get solutions to problems that don't made up. So You see them spin their wheels. You see the culture start to decline. People get frustrated, and then we rinse and repeat.
It's like we talk about automotive and cars a lot, or we have been today. And I think the example, like you come into a brand new car and you don't know all the things to know, like you got to bang the dashboard to get the radio to work. It's if you just come in, you're like, man, we're going to put all the fancy tools and tricks that I know from my cars. You didn't take the time to do an assessment on what this car is actually doing. So I think that story is big because a lot of folks, when they take on a leadership role, they do want to kind of come in and put their spin on things. And, I think the easy win there is if you come into an organization, you first got to go out and meet the folks that are going to be working beneath. I hate saying beneath you because it really is a team effort and a back and forth between leadership and folks in maintenance or operations or whatever it may be. I think that first step is just go be a people person. Like if you want to lead, be a servant leader. Like you have to understand what the current problems, current successes are. And then from there, you can develop what your game plan will be as a business rather than just one person who sits at the big glass room desk, looking down on everybody. Let's get out on the floor. Let's understand, what do I need to know before we start to make some of these changes?
Oh, yeah. One of the best leaders I ever had, and Alex and I were talking about this yesterday. He was a manager on day shift, and I was a team leader on nights. And he would pour himself a bourbon, and he would sit in his chair, and he would FaceTime me. I'm on night shift, and he'd give me a hard time, and I'm walking around the plant floor FaceTiming him. And he's telling me about the struggles that he has from a business perspective and the KPIs. And I thought it was just a funny conversation. But in that moment, he was actually teaching me what mattered to him and what we do on the floor, even on night shift, and how to improve those metrics just from his house. And it's not this profound leadership statement, but it was him creating proximity to someone who could impact the outcome. Mm-hmm. So I would hey, such and such, they called me, and he said, we need to do this, or, he's going to get chewed out in the morning. So at lunch, we went and did the thing. Mm-hmm. And he got the outcome that he wanted. And he was one of those people who was never the highly touted leader, but he was the most effective in people development.
I got you. That, a little off topic, but if you work night shift, do you still call it lunch?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious
For sure.
about that. It would be like Taco Bell calling it fourth meal. That to me is what that would be.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just
your options are limited.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's fair.
Very. Gosh, I don't miss night shift. I got a funny semi-maintenance story, but back in my ambulance days, I had this partner on night shift, old Tim. So he was a farmer by day in the southern part of Greenville County, and he worked full-time as a paramedic at night, specifically for health insurance. He didn't need money. He just needed health insurance. So he would bust his ass all day on the farm and then come work the ambulance at night. I don't know how he did it. Anyway, so we were starting our shift one morning, and our ambulances back in the day, they were the super crappy F350 6.0-liter Power Strokes, just super horrible diesel motors. And it wouldn't start, wasn't unusual. The county still don't take very good care of their vehicles. And so we couldn't get it to start. There wasn't a spare vehicle. And we were just like, damn, what are we going to do? Well, in the back of the ambulance, we've got this, literally it's a 9-foot solid steel pry bar. And I don't know much about diesel, so I'm not going to claim to know how he got this thing to start. All I know is he popped the hood and he grabbed the pry bar and he proceeded to waylay the alternator until it just turned on. Key was just in the ignition. It wasn't in the on position. He just beat the living hell out of that alternator, and the truck just turned on. And he said, don't turn it off the rest of the day because we won't get it turned back on. And I was like, damn, Tim, that's incredible knowledge. And so later, I was like, how'd you know how to do that? He's like, oh, man, my farm truck does this all the time. This is how I do it. And I was like, crazy. So going back to crappy vehicles. But we used to blow turbos on those ambulances all the time, too. By the way, medical tape. And if we blew a turbo, I blew a turbo once going up 276, the mountain, up to the top of Greenville County. And we had to jerry-rig a turbo hose connector. And so fun facts, if you take it's called an ambu bag, but it's the breather bags. It's just thick enough plastic. If you cut it in half, you can use medical tape to cut it together and connect the endpoints on the turbo. And it'll last about 60 miles before it melts. So if you're ever in a pinch, there you go.
Good to know.
Yeah, good to know, right? Good to know.
Well, Trent, we kind of been talking about a lot of things here, leadership, maintenance, and, one of our things that we like to ask guests, because we're on the Stop the Madness podcast, we want to try to call out things that we consider madness, whether it's in maintenance, operations, reliability, just business as a whole. What are some things, from your experience or things you're dealing with now that you would consider madness, and what kind of things are you doing to, we talked about identifying issues and how do we improve them to be better. What kind of things have you been noticing that some of our listeners might also be experiencing?
I think that something that's really a friction point for me, and it really frustrates me, is I don't know if it's a trend or if it's always been this way, but people try to overcomplicate simple problems or complex problems that would need a simple solution. whether you're trying to sell a software that's going to do all the things, or our AI does this, or hire us as your consultancy and we'll solve all these problems, when it really boils down to simple behaviors, systems, and processes, and doing the work. You can't sub that out. You can't skirt that process. It all boils down to you have to do the work. And there is no easy button. There is no bypass.
No. Yeah,
Preach. Take us to church. Ooh.
I'm surprised you didn't put a hand up.
I was about to, man. Felt it. Yeah, there is no easy button, dude. And that's, from like my side of the fence, being a business leader, I get so frustrated sometimes with problems that, like, my natural tendency is to, like, God, there's got to be an easy button, right? Like, there's got to be an easier way to get this done. And I'll waste a shameful amount of time trying to find the easy button just to get back to what I already know, which is you just got to do the work. You just got to do it. Yeah. And then I always get mad at myself because I spent 2 hours trying to find something, and I was like, damn it, I already knew this. I don't know why I went down this path to begin with. But you're right. You just got to do the work. So, you're quickly gaining this reputation of being the greenfield expert for plants, right? So you're in a unique position where, people want to become your best friend real fast because they, probably look at you as a blank check in some ways. And so, like, man, I got to be buddies with Trent. Where do you see lunacy just start pouring into, like, this phase? Because, I'm sure there's quite a few folks out there that are in a greenfield phase trying to build up, or maybe they're in a new position and they don't have much and they need to build up from there. And, you see the job title change on LinkedIn, or they get updated on the company page. And then it's like literally 0.2 seconds later, they're just getting hammered with messages, phone calls, texts, you name it, buy this, right? And whether it's software or, you were talking to me an instance about running fluid lines on the tank field, and, you had some challenges there. So, like, I'm just curious, like, where do you, I don't want to say struggle, but, like, where is just stupid things happening in this process, right? Like, is it, I probably know where this is going to go. It's going to boil down to people. But just what are some of the craziest things you've heard, man? Like, I'm just curious what it's like for you out there in that world.
So I think it translates to every industry. Sure. If you're trying to sell a product or a service, if you don't know what your ideal customer is, you're really just spray and pray, and you're wasting your time because people will call people like me or anybody who's a decision maker who has influence in a company, and they'll say, hey, I've got this thing, and it's a canned email or a canned LinkedIn message, and those are terrible. But they don't know how their business adds value to mine or how their service adds value to mine, and they haven't tried to have that conversation first. And the most valuable business relationships that I've had is they create proximity and they create relevance and they add value before there's ever a pitch. And I think if anyone can take that away, if you're, whether you are in business development or sales or you're not, you're just in an entity and you add value in another way, you have to create proximity and you have to add value before anybody's going to cut you a PO. And I think that's, I don't know if it's not taught or if it's just lost on people, that if I don't know you and I don't trust you and I don't think you add value, then why would you think that I would do business with you?
Yeah. People get stuck in their own world, I think, a lot of times, and they don't ever lean into that piece of, at the end of the day, you're talking to another person, and that person has their own priorities. And if you're coming off from a perspective of whether you're trying to get your new equipment into a new facility or get your product, like, they're living in that product or world of their own where they're like, yeah, this is the best thing under the sun. Like, you got to have this. It's never really where that's been about. We're talking about how can that help the people on the other end? Can we learn their story first, understand, is this even a fit? You got to have some honesty and some tough truth with yourself. Like, this might not be the right thing for who you're talking to. So I think that's an interesting perspective from your side of the world, because I think we will always fall into that trap too from a consulting and services and product side, and that's what we're trying to battle and trying to fight with. Stop the madness is, how do we tweak that and really get back to what it's all about? It's the people, it's the maintenance teams that are doing excellent work, that are maintaining equipment with pride, with direction and a mission. That's kind of what we always are trying to challenge ourselves with and fight. So I love that perspective from you.
Yeah, and I think you have to try to be a trusted advisor, and it's stewardship over salesmanship, and it's context and clarity over chaos. And once you compromise your integrity and say, I'm going to try to sell this thing because I need to make my numbers, instead of I need to help that person because they have a problem and I have a solution, and I need to facilitate that interaction. I think once you lose sight of that, you're on a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm. How do you take that approach with what you do in a kind of a greenfield stage with your own business, with internal, whether it's hiring the right people? How do you kind of shift that lens to now say, if we're going to do this in a product and sales capacity, how do I take that as a leader and start to apply it to the sense of how do I help the people that I'm going to hire be in the best position to succeed?
I don't think it's different at all. I think that your integrity and your character, that's really the biggest determining factor of whether you're going to deliver for the customer, whether your customer is you're making the end product or you're selling the end product. If you keep a customer-centric view of we're going to do the right thing, even if it loses us money in the short term and even if it makes us look bad temporarily, we're going to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, you'll be found out, and you'll either be remembered as they did whatever it took to make $1, or that person did what was right every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that speaks hard truths to me. Sounds like a little bit of a self-inflating story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. We actually, it's not self-inflating because it actually makes Digital Thinker not look great. But I'm going to tell it anyway. So we executed an integration between software that we consult on and a ERP solution, and it was bad. It was a botched job. It was real bad, and it was with a guy that we've used for a very long time, and he's good for the most part, but I don't know what happened this go around. It was just bad. It was also severely underquoted, and I don't know, man. It's just I don't know how to describe it other than it was just bad 8 ways to Sunday. And so they've got these issues where they're receiving POs within the system, but it's not translating into the ERP. So it's becoming a manual process now, but they're getting, anywhere from 100 to 200 POs on their inventory at like an hour. So the backlog just hits up really fast. And that was the whole point of doing the integration, was to automate part of this, right? And keep clean record keeping. So they came to us and they're like, guys, we spent $100,000 on this. It's broken. What are we going to do about it? And, I talked to our guy and he said, immediately kind of deflected, they don't know what they want. We've tried to do this, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of blaming that was going on. And then I went back to the customer and they're like, oh, well, it was his fault and you guys didn't do this. And all I heard was blame, and I was just so over it. And so part of me for the right thing was they already paid a lot of money and they feel like they've gotten nothing out of it, right? They've spent $100,000 on fairy dust at this point in time. So how do we make that right? So we got one of our boys on there, Victor, and he took one for a little bit of the team here. He worked for free, so to speak, because our team is incentivized based on how many hours they can bill. And so he probably put in, I don't know, it was about 80 hours of free work trying to patch this integration up. And then we ran into another speed bump, and I felt like we were almost getting taken advantage of at this point, right? Scope creep was coming in because they kept asking for more. And then I finally sat down and talked to their CFO, and that's when he laid it out on the table, man. And he was mad and he was heated as he should be, but that's where he said, I've spent $100,000 and there's nothing to show for it. And here you are asking me for more money. He's like, who do you think you are? And I was like, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I said, we'll fix this to the best of our abilities. And, I can't guarantee this is going to be a perfect outcome. And it's funny, I feel like the relationship we have with that customer is still incredibly strained to this day. So much so to the point where, I've told them, you need to go find another consulting company because this just ain't working out anymore. We just keep dropping the ball here. But they keep saying no. Like they want to keep working with us. And I know that part sounds a little self-inflating, but like I'm almost to the point where like, man, if we keep working with these guys, are we just going to drop the ball again? Like, are we just going to keep stumbling over our own feet? But they want to keep working with us. And I think that goes to show a little bit of, integrity and honesty, fessing up when you mess up. It goes a lot further than you think. And, I think these guys have also been burned by other probably consulting firms where they got overbilled, over budgeted, and nobody would own up to it. And now you got a sour taste in your mouth for every experience moving forward, right? That you just walk into these conversations with so much hesitancy that you don't want to do this, but it's kind of a necessary evil because this is the way that we have to do things right now. So anyway, Trent, I want to pivot a little bit and get into connecting departments within an organization, right? You've seen it. I don't think I've seen it yet, but I know you've seen it where inside of the plant can run really well without any software. It can just operate well. And I think that is a piece where you're right. Like you don't have to have software to be successful. Good process, good culture, good people can go a long way. But at the end of the day, everybody needs to be fighting on the same team, not against each other internally. We all got to be fighting for the same mission. So what is your approach, whether it's coming from a maintenance perspective or a different department perspective, but to get all of the key departments aligned to achieve the same mission together? Now, I'm curious, how do you do it? How do you do it specifically? And where have you found specific success inside of that process?
So I think you have to start with what is your intent? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to build a vehicle or are you trying to build a widget? Mm-hmm. And then what are all the inputs that go into that? And you break that down to the very earliest stages. And then you start plugging people in. Say, all right, Ben, here's what you're responsible for. Alex, here's what you're responsible for. Trent, here's what you're responsible for. And you have some overlap. And then once you figure out where those departments overlap, what are those dependencies? Where do we have to work together? What is the friction point? Where are the roadblocks? And you create those clear channels of communication and rules of the game. I give you this upon these circumstances, and you give me back this under these circumstances. And you have to kind of create this autonomous world where people know, here's what I'm responsible for, here's how I do the thing, and here's who I call if I need help. And all those people, you have to break down those silos so they understand I can't do my work if Alex doesn't do his work, and Alex can't do his work if Ben doesn't do his work. Mm-hmm. And we're all interdependent upon each other. And once you realize that nobody is paying for you to be a maintenance person, you just exist within the entity. And operations can't run for very long without procurement and logistics and maintenance and all those other interdependent departments. And I think it's a right size and case-specific thing. But once you understand that we're all part of the thing that moves the product forward, that's where you begin to get clarity of here's my side of the line, your side of the line, and I'll do my stuff, you do your stuff, and it'll all work out. Well, that's not really the case. You have to have someone who can identify those roadblocks, blow through those roadblocks, and address the issues at hand.
So I'm curious to get even more granular. Let's talk about quality for a second. How do you get maintenance and quality on the same page?
I think the roles are very similar.
Really?
Yes. Maintenance is in charge of capacity assurance. So the equipment has to perform at such a level to deliver quality goods. Mm-hmm. And quality is there to ensure that the goods are within spec. I think if you can get both of those people on the same page, it's the right hand and the left hand. Okay. You can't do much with one, but you can do a lot with both. I think once you cannot kind of see that the benefits of a good relationship between maintenance and quality are much greater than an adversarial relationship, you're going to make progress. Kind of see what what ails both. Is it a defective part coming in? Well, that could cause issues with the equipment. It'll definitely cause issues with quality. If I have a clamp on a robot and I change it out for the wrong clamp, that'll cause issues for maintenance, but it'll cause tremendous issues for quality. And once you kind of find those common ground, that's where you kind of start.
Yeah, man, we just keep coming back to a common theme, even going back to the first episode we recorded, right? Like it's getting the people together, and like you said, finding the common roadblocks and how do we tackle it together. I keep circling, like in my mind, while you talk about these things, and going back to my previous statement of like, it really is more simple than we believe. It really is. And I know, like my presentation I gave last week at the manufacturing conference, the technology is the easiest part to anything, really. It's easy to drop it in and let's go do it. It is much harder to get everybody together on the same page because you do have conflicting personalities, or you've got egos, and you've got to be sensitive to maybe let's call it the political climate, right? Like you got to be able to read the room quite well before you come in here and just drop your marching orders. Case in point on that, this was a story I was going to tell earlier about ineffective leadership. We were talking with Don Bent last week. Really effective leaders explain the why we're doing this. Why, like what's the mission in front of us? Why are we doing it? And how do you fit into the piece of this puzzle? And I immediately told him a story of we were doing some training thing during my Army Reserve time, and they called me in to lead this small team to go do whatever the mission was. And I asked, okay, guys, well, why are we doing this? And the company commander said, get out of the room. If you're going to ask me why, you're not the right man for the job. And I was like, okay. And so I walked out, immediately lit up a cigarette, right? And was like, boys, they don't want me doing this because you don't want to say why. So whatever. And anyway, it just was it was a really simple task we needed to get done that day. But nobody would explain the why. It was just the tried and true, bark the order, go get it done. And there's times when that needs to happen, right? Like you don't have time to explain the why. It's just we got to go and we got to go do. But then there's times where you do need to make sure everybody understands the why, because like we're all, again, trying to fight for the same goal here. And so I am, it just, again, it's more simple than we believe. Mm-hmm. Way more simple than we believe. I don't know, Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we've talked a few times on a few of our previous episodes around, looking at the workforce. We have younger folks coming in that are looking to do work or get exposed to a new industry that they've never been in before. And I think my generation, the Gen Zers, that is a big piece, is they're entering a new workforce, and that the first question is the why.
Yeah.
You could put me through training, whatever industry you go into, and I can just kind of know that's the way that the company is doing it. But where's the why behind it? How does it connect back to what our vision is for what our goals are? And so I'm always curious to know how in depth or how connected is your maintenance team to the overall goal of an organization. Does that kind of start with leadership? Is that setting, these are our missions, visions, values of what we're going to do? Is maintenance a part of that? What have you seen that very often with where you've worked, where, we're looking at what our overall goal is as a company, but are they tying maintenance into that? Is it important to them? Does it matter?
I think most of the pain points that you're going to see in any business are leadership shortcomings. If it's a broken process, it's because leadership said a broken process was okay. If it's a software that wasn't implemented correctly, it's because leadership said that's okay. Maybe not actively, but if you just let subpar performance in any facet slide, that's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But to get everyone involved, I think maintenance has to be involved, logistics has to be involved, all the people who have an interaction with it. Even the people who cut the grass at the facility have to understand why quality matters. You have to start at the top. You have to say, all right, here's the deliverable, and here are all the inputs that impact the quality of that deliverable. And you have to get all the right people in all the right seats driving towards the goal. And those individuals, you have to give them operational limits. Here's your role. Here's how you execute the playbook. And you do this, and then you do this. And if you run into this, here's your resource. Here's your lifeboat. You have to give them empowerment. You have to give them the education. You have to equip them to do all the things.
Gotcha. If you're for some of the folks watching, we like any technicians, maintenance managers, supervisors, that may themselves feel like they're in an organization where there is that disconnect with leadership, where they feel like there's a lot of complacency with, we're just going to be okay with things being half-assed. How have you seen those folks successfully connect? We talked about storytelling earlier. Like, what are some of your recommendations to folks who may be kind of feeling stuck, that are listening to this, that might want to share where they think continuous improvement is needed, or where they think there's an overhaul needed in the process or the way that the company's doing it? What would you recommend to those folks as the best way to start that conversation?
I think you have to just take action. You have to identify what are all the inputs to the process. Where are we falling short? And what's an actionable plan, instead of just saying, hey, you need to tighten up because we're losing money because of you. I think you have to come up with an actionable plan and walk with that person hand in hand to say, hey, we're going to go make this better because this is a point where we're struggling as a company. And not just doing it by yourself. You have to say, hey, we're going to make this better together, and here's what I think will work. What do you think? And then once you make that improvement, you take all that data, you go tell the story, rinse and repeat, and hopefully you can build some quick wins and some momentum.
Yeah.
Not always, but ideal state.
Yeah.
Love that. I want to flip the script because we got just a little bit of time left. Why don't you ask us some questions? Put me on the spot. Put Ben on the spot. I don't care how bad it gets.
Okay. What's the worst deal you've ever done?
The worst deal?
Yeah. You told me to come out swinging.
Yeah, that's a good swing.
Let's extrapolate. Like, what are we looking for on worst deal?
One that you're least proud of that went catastrophically horrible.
Okay, so this was before my digital thinker days. So I was a recruiter. I was a headhunter for a while, right? And I was recruiting for this organization. Funny enough, they are basically like a custom maintenance company for gas turbines for electrical generation. And they were seeking to hire a engineering manager. And they had some VC money. They paid a fat stack of cash on the front end for me to go find this guy for them. And so it was a grueling search because they had very specific requirements. I kind of kept changing, but like after 3 months of this search, there was a lot of pressure to just find somebody. So I did. Guy got hired, and he was a good candidate. He was a really good candidate. And then he just quit 3 months later. And so the nature of the agreement at the time was, we gave a guarantee, if you will. So if they got fired, quit, or just didn't work out within the allotted time, I think for them it was a 1 year period, we would backfill it for free, basically. So I placed the guy. I got paid really well on this, and he quit. And I was like, damn. I got to go find somebody new, and I'm not getting paid for this rework. And I had a hard time working with the CEO of that company. Like, he's a good guy, but I don't know. I don't think him and I got along very well. And it was probably more of a me thing than it was a him thing. But I drug my feet on this deal as long as I could because I didn't want to do it. And again, these guys paid us a lot of money to do it. And, so much so to the point to where I was self-lesson moment. Like, I'd beat around the bush with him. I wouldn't give him straight answers. I would find these half-assed candidates and send it back to him. And man, like, it was just not good at all. And I avoided the problem, which the problem was I should have had an honest conversation with the CEO of this company and said, hey, man, I don't know what the disconnect is, but you and I aren't on the same page here. And I don't know if it's a me thing or a you thing, but in order for us to work together on this, what do we got to do to work together on this? Except I just kept diverting. So I'm surprised that didn't get me fired, to be honest with you. My boss at the time, incredible guy, one of the best bosses I've ever had. He literally came to me one day and said, so what's the lesson we learned out of this? And I said, communication. So that's probably the worst deal of my career that I've ever fostered. I've had to think about a worse deal, at least with Digital Thinker.
I think the ones that go poorly are the ones where, early on we didn't necessarily connect the dots between
poor planning.
It was a lot of this stop the madness. We had to look internally and say, we're doing a lot of what everybody else is doing in the sense of it's all about the product, and the product is the savior. And, as much as early on we tried to fight that, everybody else was doing it. And so we would go into conversations with folks who were really just looking for something to help them. And we were like, the product's the answer. The product's the answer. And so I think deals that for us started off with that, it didn't have that connection. Mm-hmm. And so for us, that's why we flipped it around and we said, first we need to understand and do an assessment of, where a customer's at and really get to know them, get boots on the ground. Let's see where they work. Let's see what's important to them. Those deals have much better relationships and a lot longer partnership. And so I think that's what we've tried to fight is, we're not just going to be yes men. We're going to try to be those trusted advisors that's going to tell you not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear, whether it's we're not the right fit for you. You have a lot of things that you probably need to work on before you get to this stage. And it's just about being honest and starting those conversations from a place of trust rather than from we're going to sell you some cool stuff.
I'll say, doubling down on that one, this is a recent, definitely learning opportunity on my side, is we did an implementation for a, call it Validated Industries, life sciences company. And there were assumptions on both sides of the table, and we just never talked about it. So they assumed we were going to do X, Y, Z, and we assumed they were going to do A, B, C. And the result of that was we blew the budget out of the water. Like there was just no cost control. There was really no good project management. And it was all we just didn't ask the right questions. And so I will say the deal was bad, but the relationship is strong because having learned from the previous instance I just talked about, when we hit $0 on the budget and we were still 8 weeks away from go live. And I went to the stakeholder team and said, hey guys, this is what happened. I think it's our fault. I think it's your fault. I think it's everybody's fault. But we're more committed to the success of this implementation right now. So let's just get implemented and let's figure it out later. Like if we need to figure out, maybe I'll bill you at a super reduced rate. But the bottom line was I told him we're too close to the finish line to let this thing hold up because of money. We need to get you going. And I think everybody was like, that makes sense. So we went live and we came back and I said, all right, guys, how are we going to do this? I was like, I know we screwed up, so I'm willing to take a hit on this because I also see a long-term partnership out of this. So where can we meet in the middle? Art of the deal, so to speak. And it worked out to where they said, hey, pull together what your total cost was and then just give us a best estimate. And so I think I reduced our hourly rate by $30 an hour. I mean, it was at cost for us at this point. And they said, yeah, that's fine. We'll pay the whole sum at that rate. And so they were able to pay something, which was great. And they also took ownership of it too, right? They understood that they didn't do their side of the deal. It was a partnership that just didn't work out really well because, again, we didn't communicate well. But the beauty of it is, speaking with their engineering manager and their IT guy, we've put some really good processes in place to hold everybody accountable now. And sounds simple, right? And you would probably expect a consulting company like us to do that from the rip, but you're not perfect all the time. Not everything can be, a swing and a hit and a home run every single go around. So it's always about learning, but I'm glad to see that one panned out pretty well in the long run. And we're still they still really like us. They love what we did for them and how we did it. It's just, again, we flubbed up and how do we make it right?
Oh, yeah. One of the most frustrating things for me is when we're all huddled up in a room and we're trying to solve a problem and we're providing solutions when we don't know what the problem is.
Yeah.
And a common theme from what all you guys have said is you didn't start with clarity. And I think if there's one takeaway for anyone who's listening to this is you will do much less useless work if you just start with the foundation of clarity. What is the problem that you're trying to solve?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That goes back to part of what we talk about, right? And I mean, not what we talk about, but Joe Anderson talks about this a lot. You have to lead with the end goal in mind, right? You got to start with what the end vision is. And it's part of our job is to help people get there. Maybe you have an idea, but it's not completely refined. So let's help you get there. Hit us with one more question before we close it out.
What is the biggest struggle that you see from someone on the outside when it comes to manufacturing leaders or maintenance leaders, from your perspective, not coming from that world as boots on the ground? Your biggest frustration?
Thing I saw most recently, I was in a plant a couple weeks ago. The plant manager knew that they had some issues to fix, but it's, I guess, his job at the same time. But like when we did the plant tour with him, it was the dog and pony show. All we did was show off how great everything was. And then he goes back to his office, and I did a plant tour with the director of operations, and that's where the disconnect was. He was like, yeah, all of these things are broken processes. And I was like, well, that's not the picture I was just told. And he was like, yes, because he doesn't know. So I think the biggest struggle, to really bring it down to one word, is like humility or humbleness at the end of the day, is being willing to admit that things aren't perfect and that we need to fix them, and leaving the ego at the door, which I think that plant manager definitely can do that and is doing that. He's, trying to do what he does best. But that particular instance was, these two folks just aren't on the same page, but the guy who's trying to drive the change doesn't really understand what's happening on the granular level. And, I think he's trying really hard, but it's, again, going back to your piece, like everybody wants to have a better workday, improved process, efficiency, no overtime, get home, be safe, make money at the end of the day. And I think in this plant's particular case too, they were just so incredibly reactive. There was just no forefront or foresight to like, how do I get out of this? It was just complete reaction mode to literally everything. And so it was cool to step in and pull everybody's heads out of the clouds for a second and say, all right, guys, here's the business objective we're trying to get to. And what is it going to take to work together? Just like you said, right? How do we all get on the same page? And that's when the real power started to show of like, oh, well, this line struggles because it's always understaffed. Why is it understaffed? I don't know. We haven't thought about that yet. And now we're getting down to the root of it. So I think that's one component of it. And then like, I guess the other side to it too is like, we work with some people where IT comes in as part of these projects, and I'm not trying to hate on the IT guys, but they think they walk on water. They are so far removed from what's actually happening on the plant floor that it's like I just don't even want to talk to them anymore. So I don't know. I kind of rambled on that one. What do you think, Ben?
It's a lot of that, a lot of what we hit on today. It's communication across departments, breaking down walls, not being content with data siloing and just people siloing. I think if you're going to build a mission and a vision for the future, it's everybody working together. And I think another piece of that is vision into what you have. So if you walk into a facility and you're talking to the planner, the supervisor, they don't even know who the employees are to assign to the work, who can actually do the PMs that they have scheduled. Do they even know what the PMs are? Understanding when those were last edited. There are probably task plans that haven't been updated in 20 years, and people are just like, this is how we've always done it. And so not kind of having a vision of like, things have changed, equipment's changed, best practices have changed, just understanding, what you have as a organization, what your maintenance team is going out and doing. Really just that's the first step, is just before we even talk about anything we do, let's see if we can get a grip on how many pieces of equipment do we have? Which ones are our critical ones? Can we put it into a hierarchy? Like what rolls up to what? What's dependent on this equipment? And then do we know where our parts are, how many we have? Because that's where a lot of the savings per year are lost. You're overspending, and then it goes back to the narrative that maintenance is a cost center and it's their fault that we're spending all this money. Well, let's take a look at what we have first. Once we get that gives us that clarity to now make those changes that we need. Maybe we could be functioning at a much higher level if we just knew exactly what we had. So those are kind of some of the big things that we notice. Is it's not difficult in the sense of understanding. It's more so, let's just get out in there and do the work and collect everything. Let's just get a view of what we have, who we are, what we're doing, and what we're working towards.
Yeah. Just going in there and finding what the current state is, and so you can have that clarity on what the right work is. And Deming said people have a right to joy in their work. So finding out what is the right work and getting that low-hanging fruit to start moving things down the road so people start to get engaged and you start moving in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Trent, this was incredible. I think if I had to bring any takeaways from this, going back to what I've said probably 5 times already, it's not as hard as we think, at least for me. Maybe it's harder for other people, but at least for me, it's not as hard as you think. And you do, it's funny, you do need to start. And, Don and I and you chatted last week about challenging me on the panel, the lean manufacturing panel we did, which we didn't get a chance to do that, and I was really bummed because I was ready to put on my boxing gloves with Don and argue with him. But even when he said the challenge was, I guess I said on that prep call, I was like, people just the hardest step is just to start. It's the first step. And he said he was going to challenge me with, no, the hardest step is keeping the momentum going. And how do you do that? And I told Don, I was like, I don't think I would have argued with you on that. I would have said, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
How do we do that? How do you keep carrying the torch, right? And I think the answer to that question is you got to find the people that you're surrounded with that can help carry the load. You as an individual can't carry that torch and that hype for forever because you're going to burn out. Things are going to change. You're going to get promoted, whatever the case may be. You got to find people around you that you can enable to be passionate about those things and help them carry the torch so they can be proud of it. It's, again, it's a we thing, not a me thing. And so I think we touched a lot on that, and I loved hearing your perspectives on some of the leadership components, and this definitely won't be the last episode we do with you. I'm sure we'll do plenty more in the future. So any final words? Speak now, forever hold your peace.
I think the biggest takeaway is simplicity is key. We overcomplicate everything.
Yeah.
There doesn't have to be a complex solution for every single thing we do. If you boil it down to what are the simple inputs for what we need to do, that's the biggest thing. Keep it simple.
Absolutely.
Be brilliant in the basics.
I love it.
Keep it simple. Be brilliant in the basics. I'm here for it. Well, Trent, thanks for being here today.
Thanks.
It was a lot of fun. We got a big day ahead of us, as you alluded earlier, right? We record these things in advance, and boy, I'm staring at you right now, but I'm about to stare at this hunk of a man getting ready to come up next. So appreciate you being here, Trent. Thanks for tuning in, guys, for this next episode. We're excited to announce another buddy of ours, old Brian Bieschke, is going to be here with us. He's sitting behind me, giving me the old hand salute here, the subservient hand gesture, as we call it in the military sometimes. But this was fun. This is a lot of good stuff, and I'm excited for the next episode. So please tune in, like, and subscribe, guys, and thanks for coming to the show. We'll see you on the next one.